all year round.
It's so mysterious.
This is who we are.
This is who we are. WAVR.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's May Day in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa, Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at the wadr.org. Here are the top stories. Political parties in Mali mobilize against their dissolution by the government.
We are organizing a large meeting on Saturday, May 3, at the Palace of Culture, where we are making a vibrant call to all patriotic and intellectual forces to come together to say yes to democratic values on Saturday.
Republican police disrupts a planned rally by the Workers' Union of Benin on International Labour Day. Ivorian opposition politician Guillaume Soro denounces his removal from the electoral roll.
Can we really talk about election in a country where opponents are chosen like extras? I say this solemnly here. I will never accept this exclusion. This regime has chosen injustice as its method and fear as its strategy.
And the academic sector in Togo intensifies African Union's classification of slavery and colonization as crimes against humanity. Details of these stories and more are coming up shortly.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We begin with political developments in Côte d'Ivoire, where politicians who have been removed from the electoral roll continue to speak out against their disqualifications. The most recent to address this issue is former Ivorian Prime Minister and former Speaker of Parliament Guillaume Soro. In his latest public statements, Soro condemned his removal from the electoral roll and expressed concerns about the tense political climate as the October presidential election approaches. He urged his party's activists to unite with other opponents and confront the democratic decline in Côte d'Ivoire. Imo Edit has the details.
Guillaume Soro spoke during a virtual meeting with officials of his party, Generations of Peoples in Solidarity. The former Ivorian Prime Minister strongly condemned his removal from the electoral list, the main opponent of President Alassane Ouattara. The exiled opposition leader was outraged by what he described as a clear desire to exclude a significant section of the opposition from the electoral scene.
Can we really talk about election in a country where opponents are chosen like extras? I say this solemnly here. I will never accept this exclusion. This regime has chosen injustice as its method, arbitrariness as its policy, and fear as its strategy.
While denouncing a flagrant violation of democratic principles, Guillaume Soro calls on his party activists and those of other opposition parties to resist the removal process.
Why I have gathered you here today is to reaffirm a clear stance, a determined refusal, so that we can together adopt a structured action plan against this wrongdoing and begin the process of redesignating our candidate for the presidential election in October 2025. Because despite the obstacles, JPP is preparing to be present in the political arena.
Guillaume Soro also launched an urgent appeal to the international community to ensure that democratic principles are respected in Côte d'Ivoire. With the presidential election just a month away, the political climate is increasingly tense. The removal of Tijan Cham, the candidate of the main opposition PDCI party, from the electoral list has added another layer of tension.
A report from Marcel Arustam Blade in Abidjan, voiced by Imo Edit. Similarly, in Mali, political parties are mobilizing against their dissolution by the government. The government approved the dissolution of these political parties during a Council of Ministers on Wednesday, following a recommendation from the recent national consultation of the vital forces, which concluded earlier this week. In protest against what they describe as a democratic decline, political parties are organizing a meeting on Saturday, May 3 in Bamako. This decision was made during a gathering at the Bamako International Conference Center, where around 100 political parties convened on Thursday to establish a course of action in light of their dissolution. Key figures of the planned meeting include Yesu Makai, the president of the Party for Civic and Patriotic Action, and Amadou Koueta, a former minister and head of the Yelen Kura Socialist Party.
We cannot go to reconciliation while excluding an important part of a significant component of our community. That is why we have always called on the highest authorities for an open and constructive dialogue with the political parties. We are not enemies. We are sons and daughters of this country concerned about the future of our country. We are organizing a large meeting on Saturday, May 3, at the Palace of Culture, where we are making a vibrant call to all patriotic and intellectual forces to come together to say yes to democratic values on Saturday.
Yes, Maki and Amadou Koita are among key figures questioning the dissolution of political parties in Mali. In more political matters, demands for a cultural transformation to enhance women's political participation have intensified in Liberia. The most recent call comes from Lema Gbowi, a peace activist, social entrepreneur, and Nobel laureate. She argued that the involvement of women in politics is not only an issue of equality, but also a necessary step towards addressing critical issues that deeply affect the Liberian society. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
Lema Gbowi emphasized that women's empowerment is crucial for the comprehensive development of the nation. She challenged the long-held belief that politics is exclusively a male domain and urged women to reject the notion that political engagement is a people's thing dominated by men. The Nobel laureate argues that this perception has historically been used to intimidate women and prevent them from pursuing leadership roles. Reflecting on her experiences growing up in Liberia, Gbowi noted that discussions about political leadership often excluded women. She warned that if the current mindset continues to view politics as a male space, it could take decades for a woman to rise to the presidency of Liberia.
And one of the first things that we need to do if we're trying to get more women in political leadership in this country is a whole process of reorientation. There was this slogan that automatically crept into the women's spaces. Politics became the people's thing. When every time you want to talk about political leadership, every conversation about politics was, when President Sirleaf at the time was a political activist, I would hear women in the community say, we know why the woman can just leave the people's thing.
Lema Gbowi's passionate plea served as a rallying cry for the women of Liberia to embrace the call to leadership, take their rightful places in governance, and contribute to the nation's progress. The responsibility now lies with both women and society as a whole to dismantle these outdated perceptions, ensuring that the political landscape is inclusive and reflective of Liberia's diverse population. For Newslink on WADR, I'm Abraham Parker reporting from Monrovia.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's now focus on some economic issues. Here in Senegal, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye announced his government's commitment to upholding the Social Stability Pact signed with trade unions and employers' organizations. The signing ceremony took place on Thursday at the government headquarters under the supervision of Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko. Earlier during the day, several hundred workers from various trade unions demonstrated against recent layoffs in the civil service, which have impacted more than 400 permanent civil servants. In response, the Senegalese head of state acknowledged the union's concerns and pledged to honor the commitment outlined in the Social Stability Pact. Here is an extract of President Faye's speech.
Je me réjouis de constater que ces séries de discussions sous l'égide du ministère du Travail.
I am pleased to note that these series of discussions under the aegis of the Ministry of Labour have resulted in the development of a draft pact now called the Social Stability Pact for Inclusive and Sustainable Growth. I clearly and unequivocally urge the government to strictly adhere to the agreements and commitments made within the framework of this new pact. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that one of our country's major challenges remains youth employment. It is important to know that despite economic tensions, the labor market in 2024 experienced positive momentum. Thus, the number of employment contracts registered by Labor and Social Security Inspectorate increased from 61,036 in 2023 to 77,870 in 2024. This progress demonstrates the resilience of our economy and the joint efforts of all stakeholders. Furthermore, the social conference held on April 24 and 25, 2025 identified concrete solutions. These will be co-developed with all social, economic, technical, and financial partners.
Co-construite avec l'ensemble des partenaires sociaux, économiques, techniques et financiers.
Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, has called for greater global solidarity among workers. It warned that the world is becoming increasingly unstable due to greed-driven policies by powerful nations and unchecked capitalist interests. The TUC statement was made by its president, Festus Osifo, during the 2025 International Labour Day commemoration in Abuja on Thursday. Osifo said the global order is in turmoil, fueled by ongoing wars and systemic injustices that threaten peace and sustainable development. WADR's Usma Umar in Abuja reports.
Festus Osifo criticizes the United States government for what he describes as protectionist policies that have triggered damaging tariff wars, destabilizing global trade and causing job losses, including Nigeria. According to him, rising trade tensions have negatively impacted Nigeria's oil and agricultural exports, deepening the economic strain on workers.
The ongoing tariff wars, ignited by U.S. protectionism, have wreaked havoc on global trade, driving up costs, sinking markets, and threatening jobs everywhere, including Nigeria. Our oil and agricultural exports suffer a trade tension rise. We must push for policies that protect workers and diversify our economy while demanding global dialogue over destructive trade conflict.
The Trade Union Congress president also used the occasion to express solidarity with the people of Western Sahara, describing the territory as the last colony in Africa still under occupation. He condemns Morocco's continued presence in the region, accusing it of exploiting and displacing the Sahrawi people and plundering their resources.
We stand firmly with the people of Western Sahara, the last colony in Africa, against Morocco's illegal occupation. Despite UN resolution, the Sahara people face exploitation, displacement, and resource plunder. As trade unionists, we cannot be silent. Their fight for freedom is our fight against imperialism and injustice. We demand an immediate end to Morocco occupation and a free, fair referendum for the Sahara people this May Day.
The TUC president therefore calls for unity among workers across Africa and the globe, emphasizing that only through collective action can a just and prosperous global economy be achieved. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Omar reporting from Abuja.
Meanwhile, in Benin, a planned march organized by the Workers' Union was interrupted by the Republican police, leading to the arrest of the union's top official. The unionists were set to march on Thursday, May 1, in observance of the International Labour Day and to present their demands to the Beninese authorities. However, the police arrived forcefully at the Labour Exchange headquarters where the participants had gathered to start the march, disrupting the event. Christopher Waticho has the details.
In a statement signed by Frederick Progenoto, the Administrative Secretary of the Benin Workers' Union, CSTB, it was announced that the Confederation's General Secretary, Nangni Nikasa Mambo, was arrested and placed in police custody. Since they were prevented from marching as planned, the workers gathered at the Labour Exchange to express their views by reading the protest motion, a customary practice every May 1st. The workers alleged that the police entered the Labour Exchange building and arrested the Confederation's top official, his deputy, and several colleagues. The Confederation described this action as a violation of the Labour Exchange's immunity. It is worth noting that the CSTB organized the march in anticipation of International Labour Day, celebrated annually on May 1st, to present various demands to the authorities. These demands include addressing the blockage of civil servants at level 11, freezing the hiring of organic staff within ministries, and improving the difficult working conditions faced by women traders and transporters. Additionally, the demonstrators planned to demand better working conditions for AMEs and address the significant economic challenges impacting producers of essential crops such as soya beans, mahogany, and cotton.
Christopher Waticho with that report. You are still listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Political parties in Mali mobilize against their dissolution by the government. Republican police disrupts a planned rally by the Workers' Union of Benin on International Labour Day. Ivorian opposition politician Guillaume Soro denounces his removal from the electoral roll. Still ahead in the news, Ghanaian police launches investigation into shooting incident that left 5 dead in the eastern region. We also have a guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR News and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Let's now take you to Ghana, where the police have launched investigations into a deadly shooting incident which left 5 men dead in the eastern region of the country. The shooting took place on April 29 in what is believed to be a dispute over sand mining. At the same time, the Ghanaian police announced that it has rescued 2 women whose kidnappings were captured in 2 separate viral videos. WADR's Nadia Detete reports.
The Ghana Police Service says it has rescued 2 female victims whose kidnapping were captured in a viral video following a coordinated operation with the National Signals Bureau and the Nigerian Police Force. According to the police, 8 suspects were arrested from various hideouts in both Ghana and Nigeria in connection with the crime. They noted that further details will be made available as investigations continue. The service also expressed appreciation to the 2 collaborating agencies for their support in the rescue and arrest operations. In a separate development, the Eastern South Regional Police Command has begun investigations into a deadly shooting incident at Esiao near Akwani Dobro in Insawam in the Eastern region, which occurred on April 29. Police say a crime scene team dispatched to the area discovered the lifeless bodies of 5 men with gunshot wounds. Recovered from the scene were 2 vehicles, a Toyota Tacoma and a Toyota Tundra, along with a pump-action gun loaded with 17 live cartridges, 4 empty cartridges, multiple empty shells, and 5 heavy-duty motorbikes. Preliminary investigation suggests the shooting may have been triggered by a violent confrontation between 2 groups over sand-winning activities in the area. The bodies have since been deposited at the police hospital for preservation, identification, and autopsy, while investigations continue to bring the perpetrators to justice. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Crossing over to Togo, where the academic community convened on Thursday to discuss the African Union's recent classification of slavery and colonization as crimes against humanity, specifically focusing on their impact on Africans. This classification was made 2 months ago in recognition of the genocide and other human rights violations committed against people of African descent. The resolution was sponsored by the Togolese government. The conference, held at the University of Lomé, brought together academics, students, and members of the diplomatic corps. Abdullahi Hassan has the details.
The meeting aimed to shed light on the political, memorial and legal implications of the African Union's decision, which has been described as historic. For academics, the diplomatic corps and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, it is important to understand the content of the AU decision and analyze its scope and implications. Ayana Ejaide is the technical advisor at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Togo.
Slavery, colonization and deportation are not just moral faults for which we can settle with apologies. They are crimes. They require punishment. They require reparation. We must move on to the next phase so that states can understand what is expected of those who have committed heinous acts in terms of reparation, apologies and compensation. The other phase will be to ensure that such things never happen again.
Meanwhile, the Republic of Togo has been mandated by the African Union (AU) to monitor the implementation of its decision to classify slavery and colonization as crimes against humanity and genocide against the African people. Togolese academics therefore want to involve the population in the discussions. Joseph Sibi is a professor at the University of Lomé.
The university should take the lead on issues like these to inform the public, to communicate about the stakes and perspectives related to such a decision. The underlying question is primarily about the qualification of colonization and slavery as crimes against humanity. The second element is that we need to talk about reparations. How are we Africans going to address these questions of reparations? We need in-depth reflection. We need intellectual environments to be able to engage in discussions like with the police to agree on the forms of these reparations.
As a reminder, the resolution classifying slavery and colonization as crimes against humanity and against the African people was sponsored by Togo and adopted by the Conference of Heads of State and Government of the African Union.
Abdullahi Hassan with the details of Sylvie Ouedraogo's report from Lomé.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The guest interview segment this afternoon takes us to Mali, where political parties are calling for mobilization following their dissolution, which was approved by the government at a Council of Ministers meeting on Wednesday. Their dissolution, it's in response to a recommendation of the National Consultation of the Political Parties, which concluded earlier this week. The political parties are organizing a rally tomorrow, Saturday, in Bamako to reject what they describe as a democratic backsliding. Our guest is Amadou Koita, former minister-president of the Yelen Kouras Socialist Party, who is one of the organizers of the rally.
We rejected these recommendations outright, from 16 to 6. The recommendations resulting from these consultations are contrary to the foundations of Mali and also contrary to all the Republican values we share. This is why we have decided to reject these conclusions, and we have also decided to conduct political activities to denounce this state of affairs, to call on Malians to mobilize widely, to save democracy, to save the rule of law, to save Republican values.
According to the authorities, it was Malians, through a national consultation, who recommended the dissolution of political parties. How do you intend to mobilize Malians in a context of repression of critical voices?
No,
these are not consultations that the government was kind enough to organize. Otherwise, the revision of the Charter of Political Parties stems from the National Refoundation Conference, which brought together more than 176,000 Malians, who had also called for the adoption of a new constitution, a constitution in which more than 3 million Malians voted. The Malian constitution removes Article 185, the stipulation that it cannot be subject to any revision of political pluralism.
Does the dissolution of political parties to better regulate their new creation, according to the authorities, not somewhat reflect the wishes of political actors who themselves had called for a reduction in the number of political parties?
Yes, all political parties are now actively involved in the revision of the Chamber of Political Parties. Political practice has been regulated in Mali, but this is tantamount to wanting to dissolve all political parties. We believe all this is not good for our country. Today our country needs unity. Our country needs unity to defeat the forces of evil, namely terrorists. This can only be done by working together, and this can only be done by respecting the laws of the Republic. This can only be done by respecting the Constitution. This cannot be done by excluding an important step in Malian society. For me, there is no democracy without a political party. So today we are calling on the authorities to be wise, to say that it's possible to continue down a wrong path. But if we realize we want ways to work together, we want ways to act as they are. We want a clear, precise, and concise electoral calendar. We're already 4 months into the transition. The time has come for us to give. The political party charter has been repealed, but political parties will once again be able to be created on the basis of a new law.
You met in Bamako yesterday, Thursday. What did you ultimately decide?
We're organizing a major rally on Saturday, where we launch a vibrant appeal to all patriotic and intellectual forces to come together to save the Republic, to say yes to democratic values on Saturday.
Amadou Koita is a former minister president of the Yelen Kura Socialist Party, who is one of the organizers of tomorrow's rally. He was in conversation with Alpha Abubakar. Now, in the world of sports, Nigeria got off to a winning start in the CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations campaign, thanks to a 1-0 win over Tunisia on Thursday evening in a tightly contested Group B opener. A first-half strike by Uwa Ibrahim was all that separated the two sides as the Flying Eagles ground out a result in a match full of physical battles, near misses, and late drama. Nigeria, the most decorated team in the Under-20 AFCON history with 7 titles, have now extended their unbeaten run in international openers to 8 of their last 10 appearances. Tunisia, meanwhile, continued their winless streak against West African opposition at this level, a run stretching back to 1987. Elsewhere, Morocco got their CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations Egypt 2025 campaign off to a winning start as well, with a dramatic 3-2 victory over Kenya in Group B on Thursday night. The North Africans came from behind twice before securing the 3 points in a 5-goal trail. Meanwhile, in Europe, Manchester United one step closer to final of the Europa League after a 3-0 away win over Spanish Sir Athletic Bilbao. United, who have tripled in the English Premier, is the only team remaining unbeaten in the Europa League this season. And that's the latest in the world of sports. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa, Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falilu Soor, Mustafa Sek, and Umu Danyogo for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. At 1 p.m., Mustafa Jakite will be here with the latest in the French edition of our major news bulletin. I am Augustine Cully. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga